Good evening. Good evening. Facebook Live. Facebook Live. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. This is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. And I am your host, Mr. Brandon Robertson. And thank you all for joining me this evening for another episode of Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. I want to go ahead and welcome everybody. Go ahead and welcome everybody to another episode of Brandon Robertson's Soul Hour. Now, today's guest, I'm very excited, and I hope you all are just as excited as I am. Today's guest, he is a renowned band leader, a touring artist, primarily known for working with the acts of Chris Botti and Taylor Swift, just to name a few people. He is a graduate of the world established renowned Brubeck Institution. He also was part of the multi-Grammy Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra and the Juilliard Jazz Orchestra. He's also hailing all the way from New York City. And he is a visiting artist with the San Francisco Conservatory Music, part of the RJAM program, the Roots Jazz and American Music program. I would like to go ahead and also say that he is he's a recipient of a 15 Downbeat Music Award. I mean, everybody, this man is he knows all the who's who. He is internationally recognized. This man got over 150,000 followers all across the world. And I am super excited to have him on the show this evening. Everybody get ready. Hold on to your seats. I'm talking about Mr. International Saxophonist, Mr. Chad LB. Yes, everybody. Mr. Chad LB, I got him on the show. Chad, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Brandon? Yeah. Man, that was epic. Wow, I feel really awesome. Thank you.
Look, I told you that I was gonna set you up right. I needed to segue you into the show properly, man. How you doing?
Great, man. Thanks so much for having me on. This is gonna be fun.
Okay, so you in New York right now, and I saw a good friend of mine, Alexander Claffey, which I know who you know and you've worked with recently. He had this picture of this, I call it the Don Cornelius coat. Right, he was playing with Ben Bernanke, the trumpet player. He was wearing this coat, and I said, "Damn, that looked like the same off-white coat that Duke Ellington was wearing in that one picture, man." It's like that super suede, that it's like that super mint coat. So what I'm asking is, man, is it already cold in New York? Y'all already hit fall? Like, is it already that time?
It's crazy. Yeah, yesterday got really cold. It got really cold. New York is rough, man. We get like 2 weeks of good weather going into summer, and then it's too hot. And then we get like 2 weeks of good weather going out of summer, and then it's too cold.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, talk about, I can relate to it because in Florida, we got hurricane season, right? Now we done had 4 hurricanes bypass where I live. Like, it literally it goes up through Florida and up, I'm gonna go another way. Oh, we're going towards we're gonna cut back out to the Atlantic. It's just this cat and mouse deal. And then Sandy came, and then it was supposed to hit where I live, and then it curved and went more west. So I'm with you on that. One day it's hot, next thing you know, we're like monsooning.
Yeah, it's crazy. Totally. It's like jazz. You never know what's gonna happen.
You never know what's gonna happen. It's like whatever happens, just roll with the punches. Just keep
right, exactly.
Man. Yep. Well, first of all, I want to say to my listeners, Chad, when I first met him, sweetest cat, man, super, super welcoming. Like, you and everybody that was part of the RJAM faculty, man, y'all was so welcoming. And I'm not gonna lie, I had already knew about you. I had already known about Matt Wilson and, obviously Jason Hainsworth. Jason's a good friend of mine. So I was in Warren Wolf. I was already nervous, not because of the status of you guys, but because I just respect you all as musicians and the caliber of musicians you are at. And for me to be in that space, I was like more excited than nervous. So my nerves got the best of me like on stage. And I just remember saying, please, please, please don't drop the ball. Please don't miss the downbeat. Please make sure you hit the downbeat. Just every time you hit the downbeat. So and
that's what I feel like too every time when I play with those guys.
It's like and you would think like after a while, you especially with your resume, man, you get into a space where you're like, you know what, man, these are just regular people, man. I'm just gonna play.
Right. Know? Yeah.
And I think that's why I was so excited for you to do this show because, man, you make me feel so comfortable. Like you said, man, we just gonna play, man. Let's just play. Like whatever happens. I mean, we want it to happen good, but you know. Right. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've had such a good experience working with those guys a bit, you know, out in SF. And in general, I find every time I meet someone who I know of, you know, before I play with them, they always end up being so cool. I mean, it's just the jazz community is just really a wonderful community. And so, yeah, man, I had a blast on that. And that was so fun because I knew who you were through Jason. And, you know, you never know, like, even when it's the best players, you never know how things will gel musically. And it's really special when it ends up just really clicking. And that was a really fun gig. Man, it felt so good. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, I thank you, man, for letting me play with you guys and trusting me, you know, for y'all meeting me the first time to just go in there and just do the thing.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely, man.
I wanna actually ask you, so I read that, you know, you're from upstate New York and, you know, your dad, I saw that video that you put out recently where I don't know, describe when I was watching it, but were you holding the sax and he was playing? Was that I was trying to figure out, like, what is he doing? Like, what was...
Yeah. So my dad is a retired, you know, public school music teacher. And, you know, he still repairs saxophones, woodwinds in general, and even a bit of brass instruments. Oh, wow. In upstate New York, where I'm from. He's from Brooklyn originally, and you know, taught for like 40 years in the same school district. And then the local repair tech retired, like as my dad was retiring from teaching, so he started fixing instruments as a hobby, and now it's become kind of a business for him. And so he's still working, which is great. But yeah, he doesn't play that much except to like test horns, you know. So he'll just play a little bit. And so you know, we had the idea of like, Dad, how about, you know, because he's still got the embouchure and stuff. I was like, how about I'll just reach over and I'll play giant steps while you blow through the horn. And it was really fun. Yeah, absolutely.
So growing up in upstate New York, you know, I read that you kind of got your start real early, like 10 or 11 years old. You started kind of getting out there on the scene. And I didn't realize when I had read that you worked with George Reed, I didn't realize it was the drummer, right? The drummer, George Reed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't realize until recently, like when I say recently, like a day ago, that I put two and two together. Because I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, man, you're interviewing Chad. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, you know, he played with George Reed. And I'm like, the drummer? He's like, yeah. Wait a minute, I don't remember it. And then I actually read that on your mic. I was like, holy crap. Man, how did y'all, like, was he originally from your area? Was he a local guy from the town you were from?
Yeah,
how did you look that up?
Yeah, so he was in the city for a lot of his life, and then he moved up to Toronto for a little while. I think he just wanted to get out of New York, and there was a bit of a scene in Toronto. You know, and he gigged a lot up there. You know, sadly, he actually, you know, was there and was the one who actually found Wynton Kelly when Wynton Kelly died in Toronto. Which was a really sad experience. Yeah, I'll never forget hearing that story. But you know, he played up in Toronto a lot, and just, I think, enjoyed getting out of New York City. He would have been in that, you know, Harlem Jazz Portrait picture, because he was invited to it. You know, but I think he said he was helping his sister move that day or something. He just had something come up. Nobody knew it was gonna be a thing. It was just something that like all the cats were going to. Wow. You know, And yeah, he didn't think much of it. And then years later, it became such a
Man,
landmark, picture. Mm.
I want to comment on that real quick because in my
Yeah.
music appreciation class, I
Mm.
have a section of the class where I talk about jazz and I
Mm.
specifically talk about the day in Harlem. And
Yeah.
I was explaining to my students that the photographer, when they interviewed him, is like, how did you coordinate 50 plus of the best jazz musicians in one area? He's like, man,
Mm.
that's like pulling teeth. It's like Cass was coming in
Mm.
late, people stroll in, Dizzy's hanging out. We're trying to get him in the picture. He's cracking jokes on people, and and
Right.
then
Right.
CBS did the interview with Benny Golson, and because
Okay.
he's
Yeah.
like the last living person who was
Right.
part of that picture, and he
Right.
was showing. You can see he has the Esquire magazine in his hand, and he
Mm.
shows the original picture, and he said, "Man, if I were to show you the young Benny Golson in this picture now, I wouldn't be able to recognize myself because nobody knew who the heck I was. This is,
Right.
this is like, his pre-stablemates,
Right.
but the Philadelphians, like this is pre all
Mm.
of that. This is him just
Yeah.
starting out in the scene. He just so
Mm.
happened to be there at the right
Mm.
place at the right time. So
Right. Right.
that is insane to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure there were a lot of guys like that too that were invited, and it was just like, oh man, I can't make it today. I don't know what it is. It's just some picture.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So that was a bummer for him. That was a. Mm.
So were you gigging with George? Like, were you like, how did you start to like work with him on that in that sense?
Yeah, totally. So I was so lucky. He did twice a week. He played at a local jazz club. It was called Green Pastures, and Green Pastures had been open in one form or another off and on since the 20s. I think it was like, it must have been 80 years already almost when I first started playing there as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't owned by the original family, but there was a new family who had taken it over, and that was Howard Coleman and his family. And it was just a local landmark in the county. It's even actually a historical landmark. Sadly, it's not open anymore because the family passed.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it will pick up again one day. But it was really special. So it was this jazz club called Green Pastures, and George played there twice a week. And my dad didn't really know George personally because my dad wasn't really gigging that much. But like the best local jazz musicians from Elmira, Corning, and even like Ithaca, Rochester, Syracuse even would come and play there. And so my dad had gone before to see the shows, and I just started playing sax a little bit, and I wasn't that good, but my dad he taught me to improvise like kind of right off the bat, and quickly he felt like I could go there and like just sit in on a blues or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so he showed up, and we sat up front, and during a set break he went up to George and asked, hey, my son, he's really young, but he's already playing pretty well. Do you think he could just sit in on just a tune? Right. And George looked over and just kind of chuckled because you could just see how young I was. And I'll never forget. And he came up to me and he sat down and he went, "So is your reed ready?" And I was like, "Sure," like I got it out. And he let me sit in, and it was awesome. And from then on, like the community really had already been really fostering some younger talent, but really from then it elevated because I had some friends who after a year or two were also kind of getting some chops together, and then there was this whole local scene of like these 13 and 14-year-old kids who were playing at this jazz club all like under George's wing, and he would just tell us awesome stories, and he would give us records and stuff like that. And I really just wish he was still alive today because I didn't appreciate to the point that I should have back then because I was just a kid, the stuff that he was showing us. And so I wish now I could go back to him and just be like, George, like Don Bias is the best. You're so right. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't listen to him enough when I was a kid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Man, that's wild, man. And it's cool when I was reading about that is, as you started to progress, I noticed that the trend of like the musical aspirations that were around you were starting to like expand. So I saw that you played with the Juilliard Orchestra. Did you go to Juilliard?
I didn't go to Juilliard, yeah, but I did a guest artist thing with them a couple years ago, which was a lot of fun, at the Gen conference. Which,
Yeah.
you know, it was just the year before we did it, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a lot of peers who went to Juilliard. When I went to school, I went to the Brubeck Institute, back when that was still around. Now it's called the Pacific. Forget what it's called, but
the Jazz Summit now. Or
something like. Well, yeah, the Brubeck Jazz Summit still goes, but back then they had a college program as well through the Brubeck Legacy, and hopefully there will be again. But back then, through University of the Pacific, there was a partnership, and so I went there. A lot of really great players went there, like Lucas Pino and Glenn Selesky, Joe Sanders, Justin Brown, a lot of really really great players.
Joe Sanders, bass player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know that.
Totally.
That's cool.
So he was in the inaugural year of the program. It was kind of like a younger version of the Monk Institute in that it was just one ensemble, but it was for cool. Students right out of high school. And yeah, it was a great program, and learned a lot. Got to study with Joe Gilman there, which was really amazing. Amazing pianist out of Sacramento who used to play with Bobby Hutcherson's band. And so that was all awesome. It was just a 2-year program. And so, typically people would go there and then transfer somewhere else. For me, I went to the new school after, but didn't finish. I had started gigging, and I felt like I had gotten a really incredible education at Brubeck. And fortunately, I had supportive parents that weren't concerned with me getting a degree in jazz. So I never got a college degree, technically. But I learned so much, and still, obviously, I'm just studying the things that I learned there, and will continue.
Sure. Well, I wanted to ask you about, because that was going to be my next question, was how did you get involved with the Brubeck Institute? Because when we talked with Simon Rowe, and which I'm forever grateful that he bestowed that opportunity to come and work at the institute. Well, it would have been this summer, but COVID shut that down. But but when I was reading about that, and I asking Simon about the history about the institute itself and how it became about, do you feel that that institute helped foster and ground the kind of musician that you were starting to become, which led you to where you are now? Do you think that you got that information from them?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think that's thanks to Joe Gilman, because he was the artistic director when I was there. And, there are a lot of people who speak negatively about, jazz being so institutionalized, and that, it's taught in college programs, and that's not how it should be learned, and that sort of thing. And, I think there are pros and cons to it. Of course, that would be a whole discussion for another day. But, I think that really what's important is just the role that the mentors take. And it's more about like who you're learning from and the approach they take. Right. And so Joe was amazing in that, he would have us check out everything from, Ornette Coleman and, Steve Reich to, well, I'm going backwards. I'm starting with, later stuff and then earlier stuff, to Louis Armstrong. And we would go deep into all of these topics, and he would really encourage us, like, okay, now really like try to play like Wayne Shorter played in the Miles Davis second quintet, and try to play like Paul Desmond played with Dave Brubeck, like, and he would encourage us to really like emulate the masters, no matter who they were or what time period they were from, just to really explore. And so because of that, it was all to say, it was just such an exploratory time period for me, and amidst that, of course, just getting a bunch of nuts and bolts mechanics together as well, that I think everybody should get together when they're in college and really studying this music.
And I don't know if I read this right, and correct me if I'm wrong. Was Brubeck alive when you started school there?
Yeah, he was still alive, which was awesome. He was towards the end of his career. I think he retired a year or two after I finished. So
you got to play with him.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly. And so we got to open
man.
for him, for some concerts that he was doing, and play with him as well. And it was really special. And obviously we got to hear a lot of really amazing stories from Dave as well, and it
Yeah.
was a really special experience.
What was one of the advices or things that
Mm-hmm.
he might have left with you that you're like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
holding on to this. This is the gem,
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it was really interesting. Um, we were spending a lot of time working on original music, and that was another thing that Joe, as artistic director, encouraged us to do, and would help us a lot with that sort of thing. And Dave, was such a pioneer of original music. I mean, that was what he was so known for, was playing original music and exploring different things like odd times, and he even, like, in his very early career, a lot of people don't even know he really wrote a lot of like very modern classical influenced music,
Huh.
and so, yeah, so a really interesting body of work. Despite that, he, uh, kind of expressed some concern, I think, in my first year, that we were playing so much original music, which was really interesting, because for Brubeck, of all people, to like say that and say, like, just make sure like they're really learning the standard repertoire as well,
Right.
really, I think, meant something, because he was such an innovator and a pioneer. So
Right.
clearly, for him, it was such a large part of, his studies to be learning the songbook, as well as working on the original music that he was writing. So yeah,
Man,
yeah.
so I want to correct you on something that you made. You made a
Mm.
comment earlier. You said you never
Mm.
finished college. It sounds to me that you did not. That-
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's
He's-
and that's how I felt. It's not that I felt like, oh,
yeah.
I can check this off the list or something, but I had already
Right.
felt, by the time that I moved to New York, like I had gotten such an enriching experience from school. And of course
Right.
I could stay in school, but I was fortunate enough to already be working, and I was like, well, this is what I always wanted to do, so let me just run with this. But yeah, I had some amazing experiences, especially when I was at the Brubeck Institute, for sure. Yeah.
So when did you move to New York City? Like, was it after you finished with the institute?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So after I finished with the 2 year certificate program, I guess it would have been 2010 when I moved to New
Okay.
York. Yeah, yeah. So it's been 10 years at this point. Yeah.
Man, so you actually moved up there around the same time that most of these guys did. I because I met
Mm-hmm.
the first time I went to New York was in 2013. Like, this was when I went
Mm-hmm.
by myself, like as a
Right.
musician. I'm on my own, I'm an
Yeah.
adult now. Like, let me figure this out. And
Right.
man, I remember the first gig I went to, like, to go check out. Rest in peace to Lawrence.
Yeah.
Leathers on drums. Claffy was playing bass, and
Mm-hmm.
I think his name is Addison. He's a
Mm-hmm.
pianist, and
Mm-hmm.
I've slipped my last name, and I'm so sorry I can't remember his last.
Oh yeah, no worries. I wonder if it was Addison Fry. I'm not sure if I'm saying his
I
last
think it
name
might have
right.
been
Yeah,
Addison.
yeah.
For yeah, he was
Frei.
a
Yeah.
beautiful cat, man. He and the
Yeah.
three of them, all three of
Yeah.
them. I went and talked to them after their set, and
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence was like, "Yo, we're gonna go down to Fat Cats," and
Mm-hmm.
Claffy's like, "Come with us," and
Mm-hmm.
we went, and they took me down there, and that's to the Village, and then I went next door across the street and went to Smalls, and I just
Mm-hmm.
remember it was hot as hell in there. It was so hot.
Yeah.
I was like, "Damn, there's a lot of people in here." And
Right.
that
Right.
just so happened that night I walked in there, I got to
Mm-hmm.
see Joe Farnsworth playing, and
Mm-hmm.
then Johnny O'Neill came and sat in. So it was like I'm like sitting there like in awe, like,
Yeah.
and everybody that's
Yeah.
sitting there, that's there at the session, were just like, all right. I was like, and I'm
Yeah.
like freaking out because I'm like, yo, this is like O'Neill. This is Messenger.
Right.
Like
Right.
he's right. He's like less than 15 feet from me, and his, oh, you sound really nice. Like, really cool, man. Like, and then but the cats, the camaraderie. Like, all these cats had just moved, or most of those cats had just started moving to New York.
Yeah.
So, but in this decade, my next question for you is: you moved there 10 years ago. Do you think the music scene in New York is completely changed and revolutionized from when you first came a decade ago? Because I feel like New York is one of those progressive states in music that, like, it rapidly changes so fast that like
Mhm.
you have to like adapt yourself mentally in what's happening.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's a
Right.
fair thing to say because, you know, I've been in Florida my whole life. So like, you
Yeah.
know, like what do
Yeah.
you sensed that, or have you seen that vast change at all?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sure everybody would have a different answer. I think, my impression is that, and I wouldn't know because I wasn't there before, but my impression is that maybe a lot of the changes that happened before I came in, and when I got to New York in 2010, yeah, maybe there had been a transitional period from the 90s, and so much change in the music scene too,
Mm-hmm.
getting into 2010, and that so much was becoming digital, and record labels were losing some strength, and stuff like that. And so I think a lot of that had already had its effect on New York. I'm under the impression that the 90s were like very different.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know because I wasn't there. But yeah, I'm under the impression that a lot of changes had already happened when I got to New York in 2010. Unfortunately, a couple clubs had like kind of just closed. I think Sweet Basil was one of them.
Oh, that's a
And
legendary one.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a bummer. But in general, everything stayed strong, and
Mm-hmm.
even some new places came up. Places like Shapeshifter in Brooklyn, and the
Yeah.
Jazz Gallery. The Jazz Gallery moved, from Hudson Street, up to what's that district? The Nomad District,
No
north in
bad. Yeah.
Manhattan. Yeah, moved up, during the time I was there, and that was a bummer. I think I had gotten to play some shows at the Jazz Gallery before it moved, and it was really special, and it still is special today. But that was just one of the changes that happened over the course of my being here, leading up to COVID, where obviously now
Right.
we're in a stall. But yeah. But yeah, I think that for the large part, I think it actually kind of has been the same, and it's a really special place, as you saw. The community here is great, and
Yeah.
it's crazy that like exceptional is just kind of normal here. Like the exceptional things will happen every single night in this jazz scene. And
Yeah.
people don't even realize how special it is. I think though the locals, musicians or non-musicians, because the
Right.
musicians become so accustomed to it, and then the local people just don't know how special it is. And anytime a jazz musician comes from outside of New York and comes here, they'll be out like all night going to everything. Exactly.
That
Just
was
soaking
me
it all up. Yeah.
for 2 weeks straight,
Yeah.
no sleep, coming in 6 a.m. I'm at all the sessions.
Yeah.
And I actually just had a conversation with one of my saxophone players, which I hope he's watching the show right now, 'cause I told him he had to watch.
Yeah.
But he had asked me, he's like, Professor, you're like, you always, you just, all of these people. How do you know all these people? You want to really know the secret? The hang. The hang is real. Like if you really want to get in with the musicians, you gotta hang, and they gotta get to know you. Like it sometimes goes beyond the music. And that's what I learned when I went to New York. I was like, man, the hangs here are real. Like it's like I thought the hangs in Florida were like, okay, this is how we do things here in Florida. Nah, New York, you got to be prepared to not sleep.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Isn't it the city that never sleeps? Is that New York?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's New York. Yeah. And I would, when I first moved to New York, I think my schedule was I would stay up until like 5. Like I would, and by then Smalls was apparently already closing before it used to close. But, it was closing at like 3 or 4. I would get home at like 4:30 or something.
Right.
Then, Brandon, I would watch a TV show when I got home to unwind. Like, I wouldn't even, like, pass out. Like, I would be like, all right, got home from a long day. Like, now let me chill out and, like, watch a TV show. And then I was asleep at, like, 5:30 or 6. I was waking up at, like, 2 p.m., and
dude, my wife never understands. She always rags me when I come home from gigs, and she's like, you are wide awake. I'm like, I just literally was playing for like 4 hours straight. My body is like juiced up right now. I gotta like decompress and like just chill.
Right. Yeah, the
so
the energy that goes into playing, it's like, it's tough. And that's what's tough about touring too, is like if if it's night after night, it's like you've got all this energy and you just got to go to sleep because the wake up call is like at 4 a.m. or something the next morning, you know?
So
But,
speaking of touring, before and I wanted to ask this before we get into the records part of the show.
Yeah.
Man, you've been on the road. You've headlined as a headlining act. You've done guest appearances with other artists, you know, major artists. And so and I know this question might come up later. Somebody might ask this because I always get this question asked on the show: is how do you obtain your mental state being on the road? You know, playing with different musicians, you got to learn their music. You got to make sure that you're like in sync with what the show and the production and all that. Like, is that an adjustment? Because obviously you've been on both sides. You've been the sideman and you've been the headliner. So you headlining your own show. Have you gained aspiration from people you tour with to kind of better prepare your production and what you want to present?
Yeah. It's really interesting. Everybody kind of has their own, you know, their own way of kind of getting into a rhythm with touring. And then, you know, I've even seen people's kind of system even change, you know. So for me, I guess with my mental state, I mean, it's like the main thing is I just try to like practice a little bit every day. I find that will help a lot because, you know, if you're busy for a couple weeks and you're on the road, you know, it's easy to just kind of get to the hotel and be drained and like take a nap or like, you know, just relax before dinner and sound check or whatever. And I found like if during those 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is that you have open, like I just practice and like go to the gym or something, you know, that just helps me really stay sane. And I found that seems to be the case with a lot of people. But then there are also the guys that like, you know, frankly, just like drink all day. And then the guys that like, I don't know, like read novels while they're on tour. And, you know, and the guys that just like, you know, stay up partying, you know, the whole night and then just like sleeping until sound check. So like everybody's got, you know, their own system for it. There's no right or wrong. But yeah, I've found a lot of guys, you know, just religiously will hit the gym and do a little practicing if they can.
Have you had any experiences where you were working with another major artist and like their demands were kind of exceeded beyond what you were expecting? Like you're like, damn, what did I just get myself into?
Yeah, well, you know, I think what's cool is, you know, the music business is you know, so competitive these days, not in a negative way, but just in a positive way of like, you know, to be an act that's touring, you know, takes a lot of dedication to get to that point. You know, some artists might make it seem like it was easy, you know, getting to where they got, you know, but the reality is like, you know, every artist, I think whether jazz or not, has, you know, absolutely hustled to get to the point where they're at, you know, both musically in terms of their show quality and on the business side. And so, you know, I think really every artist that I've toured with has been pretty demanding as far as, you know, the quality of what they want everything to be, you know, at least in the show, you know, and I've always just taken inspiration from that. And yeah, especially working with Chris Bodie, honestly, because he, you know, he plays a very similar show every night. And, you know, just absolutely gives it all and just absolutely has the band just sell it every single night, you know, from a musical and just general performance perspective, you know. I mean, it's just like every night, you know, on the songs that I'm not playing, I'll go side stage and just watch, you know, with awe, you know, just with awe, like with the level that everybody is just committing to the whole show, you know, and it's just, it's probably one of the best shows that I've ever been a part of and have ever seen. And the audience reception every single night is just people's jaws are dropped. There will be multiple standing ovations typically throughout the night, with his shows. It's a pretty cool thing. So, and then the whole operation too behind the scenes is on a really high level. His tour manager is exceptional. His manager is exceptional. Everything about that whole machine has just been really inspiring to see.
Oh man, that's what's up. That's really cool because like, especially when you start to like venture out on your own and you're thinking like, okay, I've been around all these people. Now I kind of have an idea of what I want to do, and now I have a grasp of how to approach it because I've seen how other individuals, how they move.
Yeah, totally. My quartet shows musically too have like really taken a lot of inspiration from Bodie, honestly.
Yeah.
And I've also, as jazz musicians, a lot of times I think we think like, oh yeah, every night should be a different set and mix up the music, and the reality is like you can play the same set every night and we're still improvising. So like, and you can still explore different things within a very tight structure. And that's what happens with Chris. Like new things will happen, like, and I rotate in and out of the band. So like, I'll come back to play a few shows after a month of not playing with him. And there'll be new things that are happening in the set, even though it's the same music, like,
Right.
new tricks, new forms, and they're all things that happen typically spontaneously and
Right.
and I'll often be a part of something that changes and that happens. And a lot of times it's a mistake, and we roll with it and something cool happens and the audience likes it and all of a sudden it's a part of the set.
Oh man, that's what's up, man. And I wanted to ask you this one last thing because I wanted to get into the music portion of it. And for those who are watching, because I have a few people asking comments and questions. If you have questions for Chad, we're gonna get into that portion at the very end of the show. So as you're submitting your questions in, we got our co-producer behind the scenes. He's sending me the questions. So please just continue to drop them in the comment box, and we'll get that to him. And I'll promise you, I'm gonna make sure I get these questions in. I promise. So
awesome. Stick around.
I wanted to ask, the jazz lesson videos that you started to create, and very briefly, was this something that you had already worked on, or was this like post-COVID and you're like, I have a lot of downtime, so I gotta keep myself busily and mentally sane?
So pretty much the story on that is I used to teach on Skype a lot. I think I started teaching on Skype. Well, now everybody's doing Zoom, but yeah, back then I was doing Skype. I don't know, it must have been like 2013, 2012 or something like that, just a couple years after I moved to New York. And that started like, picking up big time as I started to, put more content out there and people wanted to work with me, which was always honestly very, very humbling. And so, by probably 2015 or something, it was just like nonstop. I was just, I would go play a gig, or a concert or a tour or whatever. And I would just come home and it's like, all right, let me do some Skype lessons. And so that was really cool. And what I found was that, people really wanted to get as much content as they could. And that was really kind of an effective way of me teaching them. So I would spend a lot of time like saying like, okay, cool. Like, check out how this phrase works, or like, check out how this exercise works, try this exercise. And so, I would write down a lot of things that I had practiced, over the years. And all of a sudden I started getting so much content written down. I was like, geez, I've practically like got books here. And so about 2 years ago, I think it's only been 2 years. I started, making YouTube videos, just kind of going through what I was doing when I was teaching Skype lessons, and then releasing books as, supplementary material for those videos. And, it really took off, and a lot of people were into the videos and the content and all that. And, I said, you know what, like I have friends and peers that, that also could really put out some really valuable content. And so I started this jazz lesson videos platform as a way for me to kind of help other people put out content as well,
Right.
And so so I guess it's been a couple years now that I've had that platform, and it was always just something I would do like a few days every month, maybe like 5 or 6 days every month I would dedicate to like the online
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And now with COVID, I'm just spending more time on it, just
Yeah.
off of the nature that I'm not performing right now, so
Right.
it's been nice to have that platform to to work on. But I still desperately just want to be playing music and stuff like that, so I'm spending a lot of time just writing music of all genres and forms and stuff like that, and that's still like my main creative outlet, I think, during this time.
Oh man, you definitely inspired me, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because after watching you put out this one video where you were talking about pentatonics, and
Mm,
I had just listened to Wayne Shorter's Schizophrenia album, and I had also
mm,
listened to Night Dreamer, and
mm.
I'm thinking about a lot of and Juju. I'm thinking about these records where he used it that pentatonic sounds a lot.
Right.
And I was like, damn, Chad might be onto something. Let me go back and whip out some of my old jazz books from college, and I just started shitting on that stuff, man. I
Yeah.
just it was
Yeah.
because I was just randomly like looking, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna
Mm.
check this out for a second. And I started listening to it. I'm like, damn, this is good. I'm gonna like, like,
Thanks, man. Yeah.
like I gotta like make sure that I come out of COVID like not sounding
Right.
sorry. So let me go work on it.
All right.
So we
Yeah.
we the jazz community appreciate those
Mm.
videos, and at the end
Oh,
of the
thanks, man.
show, I'd love for you to just do us a plug for that so people know where to
Mm.
find them and
Oh,
all
thanks,
those
man.
things. So, but I wanna jump right into the three records because you pick
Absolutely.
three really good records, and you
Mm.
pick one. I'm gonna actually start with this person
Mm.
because
Mm.
when I was in graduate school, I wrote my thesis on 10 bass players from each decade and period of jazz. So I picked one bass
Mm.
player from each period.
Mm.
And I actually picked Shawnette Moffett for the
Mm.
80s, which
Mm.
a lot of people were like, that's interesting. I was like, well, if you think about Shawnette, man, his dad played with Ornette Coleman, was part of
Yeah.
that
Mm.
famous group. And, the music, listening to Shawnette Moffett, like he's one of those bass players that I highly respect because his background and his story about when he talked about his dad and his time playing with Ornette Coleman's quartet, and
Mm.
just the sheer knowledge of being open and expressive in that avant-garde status. So you pick
Mm.
Chronology from Ornette Coleman for Freedom. So
Mhm. Mhm.
what does this song have the tie of freedom? Like, how did you tie that word with this particular record? Because Ornette
Yeah.
Coleman music was definitely free.
Yeah, totally. It's such a special way of approaching this music. And yeah, uh, I've had the good fortune of playing a bit of more free jazz. When I was playing with Adam O'Farrell's quartet, Stranger Days, that I
Mhm.
played with for it's probably like 6 years, I think, something like that.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, totally. And that was a chordless group, and Ornette had an influence, on so many musicians. Sonny Rollins, playing cordless, and Miles Davis, especially, playing
Hmm.
cordless. And yeah, it's just it's it's an amazing approach that Ornette, pioneered, and obviously goes, beyond just the implications of the music, and ties into what was happening with civil rights at that time, and sadly needs to still happen today.
Right.
And yeah, I think I just try to approach that music from as humble of a place as possible, because I know it's so beyond anything that I experience, and really is something that I just try to, yeah, again, approach from a humble
Sure.
way, and just really try to open myself up to the possibilities that you can explore in that realm.
So, for those of you who are just chiming back in, we were talking about the 3 records that Chad selected for the show. His first selection, which we would throw that song back in the chat box so you guys can check it out. But the first song that we chose was "Chronology" by Ornette Coleman, and that would represent the word freedom. And as you all know, I have the 3 keywords: life, freedom, and perseverance. So we're actually going to pick back up for our second keyword, which is perseverance. And you picked "Transition" by John Coltrane. So maybe give us a little elaboration on how this song has the transition feel to it. Explain
Absolutely. It. Yeah. To me, I mean, to me, Coltrane, his whole career and his music and his sound, and his pursuit of mastery, it just embodies the art of perseverance, and I will spend my whole life, I think, surely just admiring his work, and just only hoping to be able to project a fraction of the energy and spirit that he was able to project into his music.
Right.
And yeah, his just whole pursuit of mastery, to me is just so inspirational. And he was always just pushing to go one step further.
And you and I were chatting about this a second ago, but Coltrane, in his earlier life was very busy in terms of his playing, was super busy. Even when he got the Giant Steps, it was like, damn, man, you went there and and I feel bad for Mr. Flanagan, who had to sit there and endure that embarrassment on a 50-year plus of getting piped on a record that has been shared across the world, and it's like that's all we remember is that solo. But Coltrane reached a point in them 2 weeks when he locked himself up in the attic, and he just was trying to kick the habit, and he's like, I'm just going to rid all of this toxin, and I'm going to purify my soul with this art form that I've been trying to master. And I felt like Coltrane is the closest jazz musician that kind of reached the pinnacle of purists, and I used that word with Jason Marsalis when I interviewed him, and he said, I've never heard anyone use the word purist in that form. And that's kind of how I hear Coltrane. So would you say this song Transition that you selected, would you state that this song kind of like complements your transition and from your the different walks that you've had in life so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just such a passionate piece of music, and it's just so forthright, and yeah, it certainly is just so inspirational to always push to the next level. I think that's what I really take away from it.
Word. Now, the last word that you picked, which my last word, which is life, which we all need life, because without life we're ghosts. And I'm but you picked one of my all-time favorite artists, and I would classify this particular artist in the realm of the real soul genre. Like you think of 68 to 73, I guess. No, actually 71 or 72, because I think he passed away in early mid 70s. But Donny Hathaway. I mean, when you say Donny Hathaway, you think of soul. When you say, and it's funny, all of my guests, every single guest has picked one song from Donny Hathaway, because you're like,
wow, yeah.
Well, because they say, well, your show is named the Soul Hour,
right? Yeah,
that guy pretty much embodied that, right? But you picked the song For All We Know. Now you're the first one. You're the first guest to not pick Hard Time or Someday We'll All Be Free, or you picked a whole different one. So explain this song, For All We Know. How does this pertain to you in life?
Yeah, and especially right now, I think we all feel a little thrown off by how uncertain things feel right now with, just the pandemic and the whole health
Right.
crisis that we're going through with that. And, I think, Donnie is a total hero of mine for sure. And just how incredibly expressive he was singing a melody, no matter what the melody. And, this one, the inflections that he does are, like just so heart-wrenching, heart-wrenchingly soulful and expressive. And, it's a beautiful melody, but it's just what he does with it just goes so beyond,
Right.
what this melody is. He
Right.
just brings a spirit to it that, just gives me goosebumps every time. And so, yeah, I picked this one for life because I think, one of the difficult things about life, I'm no expert on philosophy, but one of the difficult things about life is that you really don't know what's going to come next.
Right.
Whether it's in love or your business or the state of the world. There's just so much that's uncertain, and he just puts so much spirit into his rendition of this song. It really is my favorite ballad performance. If I had to pick like my favorite up tempo, my favorite funk, my favorite fusion, it's like that would be tough for me. But like picking my favorite ballad performance of all time, it's just like Donny Hathaway for all we know. It's just like
man.
hands down for me.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give. I don't think I've ever explained this to you, Chad, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this. But I came up with this premise of this show because when the pandemic first started, and you and I both being educators, and we both have worked in institutions and stuff. When things got shut down, it was like a permanent uncertainty of like, what is life going to be like for me for the remainder of 2020 as a musician.
Right.
And then April, we had George Floyd happen. And then from there, it started to become a more series of more injustice things that were occurring. Right. And so around mid-May is when I had a breakdown. Chad, I had a breakdown. I said, man, my spirit is very depressed about what's going on, aside from not gigging and seeing musicians anymore. Like all of my gigs got canceled. For you, you're like, man, my summer was looking nice. And now, plateau, nothing, right? And so I thought about, man, if anything right now, life sucks. I don't feel free. And I don't feel as though I'm persevering through this hard time because we have a pandemic and social injustice happening at the same time, which made me come up with this concept of, I wonder what other musicians think like in these terms, and how are they letting music speak for their voices in these times. So that's where the life, freedom, and perseverance keywords came from. And that actually helped me form this show together. So, I love the fact that you brought, and everybody else with my past guests have all brought different perspectives of these key terms that we're living in right now. And some of the songs having associations. So I appreciate that you were able to kind of like segue into that, and go into that a little more. So
of course.
We, as we would have been towards the end of the show, but we actually got some questions, man. We got a few people that jumped in. They were like, "Where'd you go?" And I'm like, "No, we're back. We're back." So I gotta get this question in. This is from Christian Glamades. I hope I said your last name right. So I do apologize if I didn't. I really do. But he asked, Chad, what is your setup? So I'm assuming you're on your axe. Like, what's your setup for your axe?
Yeah, for sure. I play a Lupafaro platinum saxophone, is what they call it, and the mouthpiece I play is like a signature model of mine. It's called the Chad LB signature Syos mouthpiece, which is SYOS. And then I play Lupafaro Reed's classic 2.5s.
So let me ask you something about, because Chad, you're gonna be so proud of me, man. I hope man. I hope he's like, yo, rhythm section, you know what's up.
Right.
I teach jazz methods here at the university, and one of the things I always talk about with saxophones is their setup, and particularly with young players. I always get this question asked every semester: what reeds do I use? So
Right.
I know about the Jazz Royal, the Darios. I know about the Lavars. I know about
Lavaz, yeah.
So I've done my research, and I've asked my professional friends, what's good read. So I have current students who are in jazz band. What would be a good jazz read for a young saxophonist? Maybe someone in high school who is starting off, or freshman in college. Like, what would be a good read that you would recommend? Like, get this one.
Yeah, totally. Well, the trick is the combination between the reed and the mouthpiece. So like I play a 9 mouthpiece, or I guess it's an 8 star. I think it's in between like an 8 star and a 9, which means it's a pretty large, tip opening. And so then I play a softer reed, with the 2.5. And so I would say it's just a matter of probably just to start, if you're in high school or something, you probably want to go, medium with everything, and then from there experiment. But first, just get the hang of like what I used to do, just playing something like a 7 or a 7 star is kind of an average tip opening, and then playing like a 3 reed, or maybe on to 3.5, just keeping it middle of the road, and then branching out from there. So I think it's just more important that you play an average tip opening and an average strength to start out.
Okay, man, and I'm glad to know that too, because
absolutely.
I'm gonna be hitting you up next year when I got to get to the saxophone part, and someone say, "Hey, professor, what is the reed?" You know what? Hold on.
Hold on. All
right, I got that for you. So we got some real good questions coming in. Dude, you got a lot of questions coming in. That's great. Joel asked Norton asked, what's your favorite who is your favorite saxophonist, and who do you listen to?
Right, yeah. It would be impossible to pick a favorite, for obvious reasons, just because there are so many legends and heroes of mine. Right. But what I will do is I'll just give a few lesser known players, or not necessarily lesser known, but the less obvious answers, just as something that maybe people could take away. One is Don Bias, this incredible tenor saxophonist. Illinois Jacquette is somebody that a lot of people haven't checked out. It was really amazing. And then Johnny Griffin was just
Johnny
sound
Griffin
and technique just mind blowing. One of my favorites.
Yeah. You talk about Johnny Griffin, man.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody gonna come close to that sound.
So
nobody.
Ain't
nobody gonna come close to that. Okay. Let's see. Ariane asked Stoliner. I might have said the last name. I'm so bad at pronouncing last names that so please forgive me, everybody, if you please forgive me. Ariane asked, out of everyone you have ever played with, who is some of your favorites?
As far as who I played with, wow. I mentioned Bodie earlier for, just touring with him has been really special. And musical and beyond, just the whole operation. And then, maybe some people that I haven't played with is actually one would be Clarence Penn. Clarence Penn was one of the first artists that I toured with after moving to New York. I toured with him for several years, which is just amazing. I mean, Clarence was, Brecker's last drummer for, he played with Brecker, toured with Brecker for like the last 7 years of his life, I think. And has played with just everyone, so that was, Clarence is just one of my favorite drummers in the world. He would just so much energy. He would, create so many different moods in his playing. It was just yeah, it was amazing. So I played with him, and I played on his record "Month the Lost Files" back in the day. And I played with Manuel Valera with Clarence's band a lot. That was really special. Manuel was incredible. Yeah, I've gotten to play with Gerald Clayton a few times, which has been amazing. Yeah, so many people. Yasushi Nakamura. It's amazing. I got to play with Ron McClure a lot when I first moved to New York. Legendary bassist. Yeah, I've been really lucky. I've gotten to play with a lot of people over the years in New York, and yeah, I really feel grateful for the experiences I've had.
All right. Now, we got the next question is from someone very dear to me. This person is probably the most special person in my life. It would be my wife. Shout out to Angelica.
Awesome.
Robertson.
Hey,
I love you, boo.
Glad you're watching.
So the wife asked, for us non-musicians, at what point does playing music becomes a job, and how do you get out of that funk/complacency?
That's a great question.
Yeah, and I know why she's asking that question.
Right, yeah. Well, I think we all feel that. I think we all feel that sometimes, that it just feels like a job. It's tough because, I mean, the reality is if you're spending all day working on anything, at times it might feel a little tedious. So for me, I just try to take a step back sometimes and just remind myself what I love about music. And a lot of times if that happens to me, it's because I've been, just totally like swallowed up in one thing. Like maybe it's just like the business end of something, or like I've just been working on this one album, the composition process for it nonstop, and it's just starting to get a little tired, so right, yeah, I think it's just always switching things up, helps me. But it's definitely the nature of the beast. Anytime you commit your life to something, there will be days when you feel a little less energy for it than others.
Thank you, Angelica, for asking a professional. Oh, she's cracking up right now. She's like, that was for you, actually. I was like, I know. Okay.
We all feel it. We
all feel it, man. Yeah, so we got another question. Sebastian Donis. Chad, who are your favorite lesser known drummers?
Lesser known drummers. Great question. And I know Sebastian. Sebastian lives in Florida. He's a great alto player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, totally. From the Orlando area. But anyway, so lesser known drummers. I guess lesser known is always a relative term, because all of these guys are, very known in a certain way and highly respected. But I guess one that comes off the top of my head would be Craig Weinrib. Is really amazing. Let's see who else. I mean, it's such a relative thing because I think, Obed Calvera is actually really widely known in so many ways. He's the drummer in the SF Jazz Collective, but he's someone who, like, I think he literally like doesn't have a website. He's not on social media at all, like that type of thing. So Obed Calvera, although he's widely renowned in so many ways, there's still a lot of people who don't know him, even though he's like right. just a mind-blowingly incredible drummer, and have gotten the chance to play with him a couple times, and it's just been amazing. So those are a couple just kind of like off the top of my head. Yeah, actually,
I it's sad to say I haven't heard of any of those guys, but from the reaction of you saying that, everyone's like, yeah. So
right, totally. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And not to go off topic, because there's some more questions, but I just got to ask this: do you ever get that question asked, like, oh, like because you have played with this person, you just automatically know every music? And I'm like, nah, right. That's not like that's really not the case.
Yeah, that happens all the time. There's so many incredible musicians that I have never heard of and never gotten the chance to work with, and so many musicians who have not heard of me, I'm sure. And like that's just it's a small world, but also a massive world at the same time with music. Yeah.
It's like taking a magnifying glass and then you go like this and then you kind of zoom in. And then as you're zooming in, you're panning in like the smaller circle. But then when you zoom out, you realize, oh man, that's a lot of y'all.
Yeah, right, exactly.
There's a whole lot of you guys. So yeah, man. So actually, one of my really close friends, man, from back in the day, Chris Wise, man, killing musician. Chris asked for you, Chad, what's your favorite practice session / goals setting like now in the world of COVID? So if I had to bundle that into a nice little bow package for you, man, how you practicing in COVID? Because
yeah, totally. It's really, a bummer to not be able to play with people, because a lot of times when you practice, it's like, oh, I want to sound good tomorrow, or, like tonight, when I'm playing with so-and-so or whatever, playing that gig, but for me, my practice, my practice methods and just approach to practicing, you haven't really changed. And that, I'm just always trying to make sure I'm practicing things that I suck at, like no matter who you are, like there are some things that you could get better at. And, my definition of something that I'm bad at, is relative. There's some people who are going to think I'm still amazing at it, but you're always going to have things that you just feel like, man, I'm not good at that, Right. And so I always make sure that every day I take something that I want to be better at and I try to get a little better at it, and there's always going to be stuff that I feel like I'm totally not good at, and it's a process, we just spend our life just trying to be as good as we can be.
Man, you nailed it right. You put the nail right in the coffin, man. And we're gonna end right on that. So we're gonna segue out because that's a good way to end. And I also and I do want to say this one thing too, Chad. What I really respect about you, man, is your dedication to the music. Like your artistry, but your dedication to helping people.
Thank you, man.
And I can see it without you even having to tell me anything. Like I can just notice it in your demeanor, the way you present your videos. Like it's a lot more than just an educational. Like you really took the information that you learned from the Brubeck Institute, from Mr. Reed, from all of your life experiences, and you're presenting to the world like, here's my aspirations, here's who helped me preserve this music. And I'm just doing my civil duty, and the baton was passed to me, and I'm just
absolutely. You said it, man. Yeah, I'm just so grateful for the experiences that I've had learning, and still continue to have learning. I'm just passing it on. Yeah.
Man, well, Chad, it was very wonderful to have you on the show, and everyone, thank you all for tuning in.
Great to be here, man.
We are definitely, on behalf of myself and Chad, we apologize for the technical difficulties, but technology, we can't do nothing about that.
It happens. It happens. Yeah.
Just like on the gig,
Right, exactly. Sometimes something goes wrong.
Like his reed might slip out of socket for a second. You might get a squat, or
exactly.
Or one of my strings pop in the middle of the show.
Right.
The show must go on.
Exactly.
So Chad, man, thank you so very much. And please, before we leave,
for having me, man.
I want to say, everybody, Chad has a couple of records out. Imagery Manifesto, is that one of them? Right? Onward and Live at the Bridge. Guys, so please make sure y'all support Chad and support his records. Please check out his jazz lesson videos. This is like, Chad, do you want to give where can they find this? How can they access that?
Yeah, jazzlessonvideos.com. They can go to jazzlessonvideos.com. They can check out all sorts of information that we put out.
Awesome. And are you working on any new music, or should we be expecting some 2021 Chad LB records?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got an album coming out called Quartet Sessions, which was from a bunch of recordings that I did earlier this year. Yeah.
Nice. Well, everybody, man, please make sure y'all go support this brother. Follow him on Facebook. Follow him on Instagram. Chad, is it Chad LB Sax?
Yep, exactly.
Chad LB Sax. Yeah. And Chad, again, thank you so much. I finally got you on the show, man.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for having me on, man. I'm so glad it lined up. Thank you, man.
I was super happy, man, and I got you. I was like,
Me too.
I caught you like in the middle of your prime with those videos the first time.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's crazy for go. Yeah.
Holla at me later.
Man.
I got you. I'll come back.
Thanks for getting me on, man.
So,
I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, it was
everybody who was watching, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. We have another wonderful show lined up next week. We actually have one of your colleagues from the San Francisco Conservatory.
Nice.
Warren Wolf. You know.
Oh, nice.
So
awesome.
I'm looking forward to talking
Warren's
to Warren.
man.
We're gonna chop it up, and since he's up there in Baltimore, we're gonna talk some football a little bit because
nice.
Football is back. So Chad, man, stay in touch, man. I'll definitely stay in touch. I hope that we get the chance to play together again in the future.
Yes.
I would love to.
I'm sure we
love
will.
to work with you again, and
absolutely.
Take care. Stay bundled up. Because I know y'all about to hit that. Y'all about to get
cold.
that winter wonderland soon.
It's getting cold.
Yeah, man. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. And we will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Thanks, man. Take care.